Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma. I'm Nick, and today we are continuing with our series on working with the law, and we are super excited to be talking about the law of receiving.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Hello, Kizma.
Well, hello there. What's going on?
Well, we had an amazing time in New York.
Well, we did. Don't you love New York?
I do.
Yeah,
I am
the best.
totally sold on it, and
I
I totally understand it. I kind of understood it when I was there in March with you for the training, but boy, having some time with some beautiful weather and the opportunity to really walk around the city and see what's there, and to have a much more complete experience of it, I was like, wow, this is truly an amazing place.
It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I was going to say I can't wait to go back, but I just did a video for my Codes of Consciousness Facebook group. I was like, avoid saying you can't wait for something, because that means you're out of the present. So I'm just like, whatever, I'll be going back soon.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I love San Diego. I love where we live, and there is just nothing quite like that city.
I know. It's special.
Really
the Big
special thing.
Apple.
It's really amazing. Yeah, we were walking around that we had a great night. Remember, we went to that kind of Hogwartsy type of place near Grand
Campbell's
Central.
apartment. Yeah.
Yes, that was so cool. And then we took a little trip down to Little Italy.
Yeah, we ate good food.
My mom's first question because I text, my mom's learning how to text, and so I text back and forth. I'm like, hey, I'm in New York. I took a picture in front of Tom's, from Seinfeld, and I said, because she loves Seinfeld, and she's like, what's that? And but I sent her a message. I said, oh, we're going to Little Italy, and the very first thing my mom asks is so great, it's so classic. My mom is, have you met any mobsters? She loves the crime shows, and I guess she just thinks that
assumes they're everywhere.
Yeah, the mafia.
Perhaps they are, and we did meet some. We just didn't know.
Yeah, you never know. I had an amazing time though, and you got some fancy boots.
I got some fancy boots.
Have you worn your fancy boots?
I have not worn my fancy boots, but I will. They're on Instagram, people. So just go looking for me on Instagram. Kizma Wake.
They blew it up on Instagram.
They did. They were like my most popular post ever. My green boots. They're really quite cool.
They really are amazing.
Go searching for boots on my Instagram. But let's get down to business, because this is exciting. Like, enough of that stuff. Let's get to the real stuff. These divine laws that we've been talking about in this series are so precious. And it's almost like when I was studying them the other day, I was like, it's freaking almost like Christmas. Like, if you really believe and put the laws into action, they work. And somewhere along the way, they just weren't taught to most people. We don't go into kindergarten or first grade or elementary school or middle school or high school understanding these divine laws. We're told to be nice to people. I mean, back in the day, like our grandmothers or grandfathers would be, treat your neighbors, you would want to be treated. That's a law.
Yeah.
And it just got broken down into little phrases so we would understand. And then I think people started to just forget or neglect them, or got excited about other things.
Yeah, or like overcomplicated or something. It kind of comes, there's certain ways that it just comes back to that. And some of those older things I think got lost along the way as well. Like respect for elders is something that I think really kind of gets lost in translation, and that I think is really important. It's not necessarily about just because that person's older, it's about directing that, respect and that energy, and developing in yourself that attitude of reverence. Yeah. And they just happen to be a symbol for that, but today we're talking about the law of receiving. And
wouldn't you all just love to receive some awesomeness from the universe? I mean, let's just stop and think, yes, it would be so cool. And yes, I'm super receptive to receiving. Let's hold that intention to start.
Yeah. That's a really beautiful way to start that, the softness and the receptivity of
Receptivity, receiving.
Yeah, it's tuning in, and allowing that to happen. Where do you want to start?
Well, for me, in order to receive, we can just be open and receive, and these amazing things come our way, and that's awesome. And we can also set an intention of a desire. We want to receive something. There's a particular thought or notion or whatever that we want to receive. It's a desire. And you and I were talking before we hit go on the mic, is that some people, especially in the spiritual context, will put a negative kind of vibe on desires. And we had a flashback to one of our trips to India where Swamiji was like, desires aren't bad. We need a desire to grow as a human.
Right.
If we didn't have a desire to be a better person, we wouldn't be doing work to be a better person.
Exactly.
And so we want to just right off the bat, it's like desire is like this want to have a fuller expression of life.
Yeah, and that's exactly how he puts it here. His true desire represents the urge of life, seeking a fuller expression, and is kept alive by continuous expectation of its fulfillment.
Perfect.
So in a lot of spiritual teachings, that's something that I've seen, is that desire becomes the enemy. It's represented by Satan, Shaitan, what's the one, the Buddhist one? I can't remember the name, but there's these kind of like devil-like creatures that are representative of base human desires. And I think there's an element of truth to that, because what he's really saying here, and this is a really important part, is kept alive by, the urge to life, seeking a fuller expression.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Okay, fuller expression. Well, what does that mean? That's something higher. Right?
Something higher.
It's following the natural expression of the universe, which is expansion.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And we're here to, at the highest level, seek self-actualization. That's a higher form. Yes, all this other stuff goes on where people start thinking lower vibe and et cetera. But the laws work in the higher aspects.
Right.
It's the rhythm of the higher.
It's that, yeah, exactly. That rhythm of growth, of evolution, of expansion. And that is really the purpose of desire.
Right.
It's the proper use, I should say, the proper use of desire is to have it for something higher.
Exactly.
Right? And we know that, like, and that's another one where, like, in the simplest of terms, it's like, okay, you know that, you know, like we've heard that before, like pitch that one up. If you've listened to our podcast at all, you know that that's a really important piece of it. And it gets kind of muddy or watered down or overcomplicated or whatever, that, you know, that we lose connection with that. And you, to me, I just want to, I don't know if I'm giving a shout out or whatever, but one of the things that really inspires me about you is that you have such a great connection to your higher purpose.
I do.
You do. You really prioritize it. You prioritize it like not many people that I've ever encountered.
Thank
before.
you.
And that's something for me that's always a guidepost and something that's really inspiring.
Thank you.
So
desires are pretty awesome. Now, when desires get, let's put it this way, when they get convoluted or when we're not receiving the desire that we put out there, it's usually because one is not letting go of the desire. So I kind of had this image of, we have a prayer, we have a desire, we have a meditation, and it's kind of like write it on a note and then you throw it out to God, to the universe, to source, kind of in this full faith. It's like, here you go, do what's best. It's when we hold on, it's coming back to attachment always, right? We've talked about that in other podcasts. It's when we're attached to the desire, having to be a certain way, show up in a certain way. That's when it gets congested, and that's when the law won't flow for us.
Right. Well, it's because the law of receiving is the flip side of the coin of the law of giving.
Exactly.
So you can't have one without the other. And when the focus is only on one side of that, or disproportionately on one side of that, then it sets up, and I always look at these in energetics, right? So it sets up an energetic congestion
right
on one side that things can't flow.
Yeah, I'm going to get my desire. I'm going to get my desire. It's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly right. And to look at the flip side of that coin is there's the people out there, especially in the spiritual realm and the coaching realm, the speaking realm, the helping, the people helping type, the helpers. And they get super into their hearts and super into their giving. And that is a really beautiful thing. But when all of their focus is on the giving and it's out of proportion, well, it's the same problem. It's just flipped upside down.
Really good point. Congestion happens.
Yeah.
And they'll receive something, but it'll be more of the negative or the lack side of it.
Exactly.
Right. So if someone's over giving of time, karmically, they're going to have to pay and they could actually end up losing money.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it's this really beautiful hourglass up and down.
It's keeping everything in proper flow. Like if you dam up a river, you'll make a lake, right? And the lakes are lovely, but the water doesn't flow. Okay. And if you don't have strong banks on the river, okay, well, same situation.
Exactly.
It gets overfilled and then the water goes everywhere. But when you have strong banks, the water it continues to move in a really directed, powerful way. And you have to have that flow, and you can't have that flow if you're only focused or disproportionately focused on one side of the coin.
So good. So the river, the lake, the ocean, whatever, receives it openly.
Yeah.
When it's directed.
Exactly.
Very easily. I really love that. And I want to talk too about this getting versus giving. You know, we've taught in our courses, I know a lot of my students in the Mindset to Get Your Prosperity Set course, and there'll be a link for that in the show notes, a little special. It's an amazing course, and we're starting up live calls soon. But tithing and giving is very important. What can happen is in our mind, and it makes sense that we would think, well, I'll give after I get. Right? That's a logical mathematical equation.
Right. When I get, I'll take a certain amount and
then I'm going to give it.
Right.
However, that equation does not include faith, and it doesn't include the faith in the law. The reason that we're going to give is to have this beautiful wheel turning of giving and receiving.
Right.
Giving and receiving, that flow. So there is this element of like full faith and trust is like, in you know, Catherine Ponder's book, she has so many stories, and Florence Scovel Shinn about someone on their last dollar, and they'll go say, go find something to give. And then all of a sudden this, miracle's happening. Now, on the other side, people will say, well, okay, I have to give in order to get. I understand the laws. I'm going to go give. I'm going to tithe. But there's a very kind of this nuance problem or issue is that the focus is on getting.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go give so that I can get.
Right.
We just want to give and receive. And that was a big thing for me that I really learned studying this law.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's giving freely and receiving freely.
Right. Without hooks.
Without all the hooks around it.
Yeah.
And the mind it's looking to balance the equation. So it's looking for that constantly for that one-to-one exchange, which is not something that really shows up in our world in that way. Things show up in very unexpected ways. And it's not always a one-to-one thing. When you give, depending on the lag time, it may grow as it comes back to you.
Oftentimes the biblical references are, if you give, you'll receive times 10.
Exactly. That's the whole concept behind a tithe.
Right.
It's a tenth.
Right.
Which is a whole other deep teaching. Actually, there's a really deep teaching behind tithing, which is truly amazing. And how we do that. But at the end of the day, it's the hooks into the giving and the expectation that it has to show up in a certain way.
Right.
Now, there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's totally right to be expecting in return.
It is.
Right.
Expectation gives our magnet a little charge.
Exactly. And it's also just a clear understanding of the law.
Exactly.
That, okay, great. And that's great for the expectation, but this is where I think people really turn this upside down or get stuck in the mud with it, is It's like, okay, I gave X amount of dollars. I'm expecting X to show up in my bank account in this specific way by this specific time.
Yeah.
Because they say, right. Because they say, well, in the law of attraction teachings that I hear a lot of, they're like, oh, well, you have to have a super clear vision and everything like that. Well, that can actually work against you at a certain point when you become over exacting.
I like the visions, but I understand what you're saying. It's like, again, it comes to attachment.
Well, you miss it.
You miss it. You'll miss the miracle because you're expecting something else.
Exactly.
So hold the vision, and that'll kind of takes us to another point of the desire and the manifestation. It's like you have a vision, but it's like this little movie running in your head. And I bet most of our listeners out there, you'll remember a time when you manifested something, and you manifested when you were so laid back, kind of like not agitated, not anxious. You just kind of saw something, you had this desire, and next thing you know, you were receiving it because you weren't gripping it. It was a flow thought vision, and you weren't attached to it. It's when the big, and it's a little bit frustrating because it's those big manifestations that people will create anxiety, and I've got to have this and I need it. The moment we say we've got to have it and we need it, we've put parameters of a lower vibe around it.
Right.
It's not in flow with the law.
Right. How did you manifest your boots?
Well, I think we're just walking down the street and I saw them. So I'm not sure why, but...
Were you calling in boots?
I was not calling in boots.
The boots just appeared?
Let me think if I just saw them. I don't know.
No?
I think, it's New York City, and I was like, oh... I think there was a flash during the day of like, yeah, I haven't really shopped. That's okay. That's cool.
There was the Kisma beeline. That was like...
It was like, we're going to that store now.
Yeah, there was no question. You were already like 10 steps ahead of me. And you're just like, you're in the store. I'm like, all right, well, we're going into this place. I didn't even know what it was.
What do they call Fluvogs?
Fluvogs, yeah.
Fluvogs boots are the best. A little shout out there. Maybe they'll sponsor our podcast now. Fluvogs, come on.
Maybe so. I got an amazing pair of shoes myself.
You did? You got two?
I did.
Nick bought 2 pairs of shoes. Talk about receiving. So there you go, people.
And I did. I needed some new shoes. I'm very excited to wear them. Okay, so it was there to receive. It
was there to receive.
And then I did not expect that to show up in a pair of Fluvogs. And so they did. And now I have amazing shoes, which is super exciting. But think about it. Like I was open to receive. I tried to shut it down a little bit.
Yeah, you did. You did the little, should I get to? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, which takes me to,
duh, like, why wouldn't you get to?
Which takes me to another point is that people will be like, well, should I not ask so much? Is it possible for the desires to be too big? Is it wrong? Absolutely not. The greater the desire, now remember, we're talking in a higher aspect. The greater the desire for growth, for having that sense of a fuller life, the greater the magnetism in your own thought and attraction. This is really important. We are not to be limited. Now, yeah, I'm not saying everyone run out and buy 10 pairs of shoes. Like, we have to be wise when we're doing the interaction of money. I'm talking about, though, in your vision, in your desires, as you see your vision of whatever it is you're doing, don't make it small.
Now, when I hear that and I hear you talk about it, what comes to mind for me is that bigger isn't always better necessarily. So, okay, so somebody can have a huge desire for a lot of money, and they're just like, it's totally selfish. It's like, I want a whole lot of money for me so that I can live the lifestyle that I want and take over the world.
Well, taking over the world is not of a higher...
Well, that's exactly what I mean.
Right.
And that's going to give them a certain amount of energy. But there can be another person who really just has the desire to seek the highest in themselves that gives them so much more energy and creates so many more miracles in their lives because it's truly rooted in something higher.
Well, seeking the highest in yourself is a big desire.
It is. But it's not necessarily a big, a ton of money or a really big, I'm going to change the world. It's not like that kind of big. It's a much higher desire.
But it's higher than what most people will, when we're really talking about what the highest version is of ourselves, that's very big. That's the biggest.
Yes.
Right. So we trip ourselves up with words and money and things and whatever. I make it for the higher and think and allow, if that's your nature, to have a big desire. I do find that most of my clients, when they think bigger, they manifest faster. It's when they're small and constricted and somewhere there's this layer of, well, I don't know if I deserve it or what, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And the same with my life when I've gone, okay, I have to think bigger. What is that bigger? And that bigger is inclusive of other people, of humanity, of the planet in a good way.
Yeah. And I've seen that as well. It's a container thing. It has to do with expanding the container in myself, where it's like, okay, well, you know, and you hear this a lot of times, like, oh, we'll go for the achievable goal, you know?
Right.
Well, that's nice and great. Like you can go and hit that. But if you really went for something that was more true, like if you were really honest with yourself and really admitting about what you really want, you know, then that gives you the opportunity to really expand and allow in something more. And then there's a funny little thing about this though, that I think is important, where we adopt other people's big goals.
Yeah.
It
Not
runs,
so cool.
It runs rampant in the coaching industry.
Oh, yeah.
Of, you know, you got to have this big vision that's going to change the world and everything like that.
10x it and 20x it and live on a beach and drink martinis all day.
And with your laptop lifestyle. You know, and it's like, okay, well, you're adopting somebody else's goals. And many times that not only may it just not be a fit for you, but also there are, you know, when you look at a human potential and what a person is designed to do, there are people who are designed for really big things. And there are people who will have smaller goals in their life. And that's really, to me, that's the important part of like what's truly higher and what's just bigger for bigger's sake.
Right.
You know, what's true to you. But
exactly.
every human being has the capability and the capacity to reach towards their highest potential, which is truly the highest frequency desire that they could have. Right. And everybody will go about that in a different way, and how they express that in the world, that comes down to your uniqueness.
Exactly.
Right.
Love it.
Cool.
I love it. Think big, desire big. It expands your field.
So what does he say here? He says, a dreamer or wisher is one who is continually praying, sending out his ideas, his desires, and is so busy dreaming that he gets all his enjoyment out of his dreams. He does not know or realize that to release his dream and allow it to go forth and accomplish what it will in time return to him for good.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So it speaks back to what you were talking about, of that letting go.
Letting go of the desire, of the thought, of the manifestation.
Yeah.
Not to be attached. Because if we're just sitting in our little dreams and wishes, we're just checking out.
Yeah.
We are not functioning in the world. We're like, I'm just going to sit and daydream and think about all these cool things. And it can be very pleasurable for people.
Sure.
Right? Just be in that dream and that daydream and it's running. But that release of it, it's like that note you send up to God. It's like, here it is. And then we go back, you know, do our life and be in life and do what we're supposed to do. We've sent it out there.
Right.
It's like it's tithed to the universe.
Right. And it's like, well, if you're just living in that and you don't have the other piece of the actual, you know, bringing that into the world. I mean, think about Tesla. Okay. So Tesla was definitely one who understood possibility. Like, dude lived in possibility. And we would not have any of his amazing inventions if he only lived in possibility.
Right.
He worked tirelessly to bring those things into the world to his own detriment at times.
Yes.
Which turned that upside down for him. But at the end of the day, it's like you have both. Now I see another thing around this that I think is pretty interesting, where people will spend like their 10 minutes doing their manifesting, you know, and they're like, and they're thinking about like, I want this and I want that and I want the other thing. And then they go out into their day and they are so absorbed in their day that they miss all the miracles around that are showing up. So it's like they get so back into their mundane world and everything that they're used to and everything that they know.
Because they want it to be magical.
Exactly. That they don't see that thing starting to show up. So they don't take the opportunities that are showing up.
Right.
Right. So I see this all the time.
They're not receiving.
They're not receiving, right? Because they're so focused on all the other mundane stuff that they're so used to, that the magic of that thought, that beautiful thing that they're creating in their mind, it doesn't have a chance for them to really show up and take advantage of the opportunities and continue to grow and nurture that, because they're so absorbed with all the mundane stuff.
Exactly.
It's
receiving. And just as well to like put it into the space of being an entrepreneur, coach, trainer, if anybody out there is, I know for me, I will throw out a desire for my business, a manifestation, and then I'll get these steps that come up. And some of those steps are expensive. It's like, oh, I just met Lisa Sasevich and you're going to go do a half VIP day because I've been like manifesting. I really want to get clear on my message. And then I go to a talk and I was like, oh, she knows and she'll be able to help me. And then there's an investment, but I'm not going to shy away from it because it's so clear intuitively to me. That's what I have to do. It's just like, there's no, yep, got it done.
Yeah.
If I felt that doubt, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
So the signs and the flow of it all come in interesting ways.
Yeah.
And the receptive self is one that eyes wide open, heart open, receiving, and then when we give, there's just a joyfulness of the giving.
And that's the most important. That's the magic.
That's really, I think the law. The law of joyfulness of giving. It's not like the law of it's the law of joyfulness giving.
Kisma's renaming it.
Hello, universe. Because then it's like when you're giving in that joyful state just to give, the receiving is a no-brainer. It just happens.
Yeah. It just shows up. I think that brings us to this last one that I thought was really interesting here. The mind is like a sponge. We've heard that before. We squeeze it hard with our anxious thoughts, but not until we can release the pressure and allow the sponge to take its normal shape can it become absorbent and receptive again.
That's a good one. SpongeBob.
Yeah.
What's his name? SpongeBob. Yeah.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah. Squeeze him and then he like opens up. I love that.
Yeah.
You can just see that image.
Yeah. It's so vivid and it so speaks to that ability to receive, but it's that anxiety over how it's going to turn out, or is it going to work?
Or when am I going to get it?
Exactly.
Or if I don't get it, something bad's going to happen. All that is going to keep that sponge squished.
Yeah. And I think it's because many times people are trying to prove these things to themselves. And so there's this fear that, well, if it doesn't work out the way that I think it's supposed to, then I got it wrong.
And the laws don't work for me. Not true.
It doesn't work for me. Yeah. The laws are the laws. Yeah. It's like you don't have to, and please, by all means, don't believe us.
Go try it.
Just because we're saying any of this. They're not anything other than just an is. They're just an is.
Yeah.
And if you have eyes to see and a willingness to be receptive to what is there, then you can allow these to work in your life. But when you're in that space of like, I want to see if it works and I want to like, see if I can get it, and everything like that, well, you're really narrowing the scope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's give our listeners a couple of tips to employ the law of receiving.
Couple of tips.
Yeah. For me, it is to take the get out of the give. Take the get out of the give. I have a suspicion, and I'm really open if anybody emails in, you disagree with me, but I have a suspicion that even overgivers are overgiving because somewhere they think they're going to get more.
Yeah.
Or they feel a sense of unworthiness and they're trying to build up that unworthiness by overgiving.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
I've seen that many people. Just give for the joy of giving.
Yeah.
Be wise in your parameters and your boundaries and just give for giving.
Yeah. They're giving to fill a void and that's upside down.
Yeah.
One of my biggest tips with this would be what he just said there with the sponge.
Yeah. Don't strangle it.
Don't strangle it. And the anxiety that we put around the things that are showing up in our lives really tends to clamp down on that. And then the mind itself becomes parched.
Yeah.
there's no room for the energy to flow because
there's
all
not
constricted.
An expansion. Yeah, it's all constricted.
There's a stranglehold with all of the anxiety and the twisted up desires and the things and all the concern and all those things. It really, and it makes it very, very difficult to see what is showing up in my life when I have felt that things are most challenged, or I'm feeling most lack is exactly that. It has a stranglehold on the mind and it's so difficult to see what's actually showing up.
Right.
So one of the things around that is helpful and is the right use of it is gratitude.
For sure.
Gratitude exercises for that are very, very helpful for starting to open up.
Because you're focused on what is working, what you do have.
Yes.
And that through the law of increase, we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. That's my tip.
I like that. I think one more is to write those notes to the universe. Like get your desires, let them be like hefty, good, purposeful, serving mankind, humankind. Write it down and then just kind of like toss them up to God, the universe, and be it, full faith. It's going to come back in the divine way, in divine time.
Yeah, you can't just say the words for that one.
Yeah.
You really have to do the internal work to truly let go.
For sure.
That in the old school spiritual text, they would call that a sacrifice. You're sacrificing.
I don't like that word.
The giving up. Yeah, well, that's because the word has so many weird things that are put around it. But
can you imagine if we did a podcast sacrificing?
Sacrificial manifestation.
Don't worry, people. It's not going to happen. It's not happening.
Oh, goodness. That would be weird. I think we'd have to do a video for that one.
Yeah. Weird.
We could put on some ceremonial robes. Yeah. So I think that's,
I love it. I'd love to hear from our listeners how you use the divine law of receiving, what you're giving with joy and what you're receiving with joy. And write in info@sourcemovement.com. If you're interested in working through some of the prosperity and understanding the spiritual laws around that, check the show notes for a link to Mindset to Get Your Prosperity Set. It's a beautiful course, and we've got new live calls starting very soon.
That's exciting. If you enjoyed this episode, if there's somebody in your life that you would like to hear something that maybe you've told them and they haven't heard it, and you're like, don't you understand? Don't keep beating that person up. Just slip them a little copy of our podcast and say, hey, I think you'll like this.
Give the podcast.
Yeah, you're giving, right?
Yeah.
It's a little tithe.
I love that.
You give, and knowledge is one of the most beautiful things that we can give.
Yeah.
And that's what the Illumination podcast is really all about, is just, shedding a little light on our lives and a light on our highest and best to really let us all step into that.
Absolutely love it. Thanks for listening, everyone. Much love. Peace to you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.